Hello, and welcome to this week's Qredible live broadcast. We are joined today, as always, by Brian Fitzpatrick, our CEO and chairman, and we're very excited this week to have Christine Harrell with us. Christine is the founder of Firefly Growth Solutions, where she helps heart-led medical cannabis businesses thrive in this complex and evolving industry. She's here with us today to discuss challenges and opportunities facing medical cannabis professionals. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Christine.
Thank you, Taylor and Brian. So happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you.
Just to start us off, could you tell us a little bit about your professional journey and your background?
Absolutely. So I started in the cannabis industry a couple years ago. I had listened to a podcast by a guy, Chris Walsh, who used to be the CEO of MJ Biz. And he was saying, we need more people to come over to the industry and get involved, professionally. I was thinking, well, I'm a big advocate of medical cannabis. Why wouldn't I do that professionally as well if that's an option for me? I hadn't really considered it before, But I worked really hard to figure out where my skills aligned. I ended up getting employment with a cannabis technology company called LeafLink. I was there for a little under a year. I learned a lot, met a ton of wonderful people trying to move this industry forward amid, massive regulations and hurdles. And, our best friend Metric that we work with every day in the industry for seed to sale tracking, which is very important, obviously, to stay compliant. But my experiences at LeafLink really led me to kind of desire to help brands and retailers on a little bit more of the granular level, while also helping from the medical side as a patient, seeing some disconnects in how medical patients are, able to access cannabis and kind of some of the challenges on that side as well. So we feel that Firefly allows us to do great by doing good and, helping people and just moving the ball forward on this beautiful plant that has so many incredible healing properties that I have personally benefited from immensely. So.
Yeah, I love that background and the fact that, I say when I first got involved in the industry, there weren't as many suits as there are now, because what's happening is the dynamic's changing, right? A lot of professionals from other careers have heard that call and they are coming in, and it's really great because it's a great mix of people, the legacy operators and folks that really know how to grow the plant, and the professionals that are coming in. And, my personal journey was when I was growing up, I actually hated marijuana. I never tried it. And basically, due to some very significant, negative experiences, I actually could not stand it, and I never tried it. So, in fact, to this day, the only thing from a cannabis perspective I ever smoked was a CBD pre-roll. I actually did it with a couple of my boys, my teenage boys. They're like 19 and 20. And but what really got me changing my perspective about it was that I was not a big fan of pharma. So I actually tried to avoid taking prescription meds and tried to focus on more holistic things, because I found as the older I got, the more prescription meds that my doctor was telling me to take, and I didn't like taking them. So I started really investigating supplements and CBD, and later on, I basically eliminated a lot of the prescription drugs. So I eliminated cholesterol meds. I eliminated prescription sleep aids. I was on literally a commercial grade antacid, and dropped them all, because I finally found the right combination of things, which includes CBD, other supplements, and then in the cannabis marijuana side, I take the THC at night or when I'm getting ready to get on a long flight and need to chill out. So I think the perspectives are really changing. So here was my perspective. Absolutely against it. Coming from the financial services, banking, and regulatory world, I never thought I would see myself. So we're starting to see really a lot of changing perspectives in the industry. And what is your sort of experience been in seeing how doctors and pharmacists and changing attitudes have been, and how that's emerging?
Yeah. So, I, like you, my first experience with cannabis was recreational cannabis use among my friends and in college. And, trying to shift the mindset to looking at it medicinally. I mean, I think, cannabis is great. It has a lot of, you can have a lot of fun with cannabis, but it really, the main reason that I use it is for its medical benefits, right? I am managing symptoms, and I am, like you, don't take any pharmaceuticals, and I haven't really liked them. I mean, my personal experience was I was miserable. I was going through a divorce, and I just had a lot going on, and I was not in a good place. And I was going to my doctor, must be something wrong with me. No, you're perfectly healthy. The things that we go through in our minds, and just prescribing me pills, no big deal. Like, here, try this, here, try that, and I was using alcohol to self-medicate because, it was wine o'clock, and I was in that culture, the mom culture of the coffee to wine. And, I was using it to manage what I thought, was managing my anxiety and other things. And ultimately, I was so miserable. I didn't like any of the pills. It was just, I was kind of in a rut. And then someone suggested that I get in the medical cannabis program in Louisiana. And I had kind of heard that that Louisiana had one, but I wasn't really sure. And I looked into it, and I was able to get telemed. I had my card the same day. I was able to go to a dispensary the next day and kind of start my journey as a medical cannabis patient. And the best part was I was so excited to come back to my GP a year later and tell her that I was great. I was doing better than ever. I had found, medical cannabis, and that was working for me. And she was not impressed nor happy for me. And I found later in my file that I am now labeled a drug user as a check mark. So
Oh, no.
that is the reality of what we're still dealing with, and really highlights the disconnect between, kind of Western medicine, what we're used to here in the US, which is very heavy, pharmacologically. There's a lot of prescriptions out there for a lot of different things. And then, alternative medicine, plant medicine. So this experience has helped me want to become a better advocate for plant medicine, because, even getting my telemed card, it doesn't come with any instructions. I mean, cannabis is one of the only medicines that you don't get a back label to tell you, you go into the dispensary, you talk to the bud tender, you try to look online, glean information. If you're researching what you're doing, it's still confusing when you go in and you see this huge menu at the dispensary, and you just, everything feels kind of like, can I be doing this? I mean, that was me, in the first time I went in. So it's very hard to find a source of truth. It's still a Schedule 1. The AJEM, the American Journal of Endocannabinoid Medicine, is a phenomenal resource that I love. I follow them on LinkedIn. They have some great science-backed articles. There are really good publications coming out now, if you look for them, that provide a lot of information. But again, it's a lot of effort from the patient side to actually go find this information. And that is one of the challenges.
Yeah. And I think doctors and pharmacists, they have such varying attitudes towards medical cannabis. And, some doctors I talk to, they're really into it. They've done their research. And when it comes to those doctors, some of them have the proper experience, but what I hear from them is that they're not getting the right education. Their normal education and their educational credits that they have to update really doesn't include a lot of information about cannabis. And I think that's a function of a lot of the lack of funding. The fact that we're still calling this a Schedule 1 drug, that's it's sitting right next to heroin, come on now. So, that's a little bit crazy. And I think that's really holding us back. So as the medical cannabis industry changes and becomes increasingly legalized, what do you believe are the benefits of these changes, and what are the downsides?
Well, the benefit, is accessibility, because, the legacy market, the illicit market, unregulated market, whatever you want to call it, is alive and well. And, most folks who are using cannabis, that way, there's not a huge motivation to go get a medical card, given that it's expensive. Some states like Mississippi have limits on how much you can purchase, very restrictive limits. In Mississippi here, a patient can only buy 6 units a week with a total of 24 units a month. So there's a couple days layover where they're going to be short. 6 units is 6/8, or it's 6 1-gram cartridges, which are so different in how you can, the efficacy and the potency of those, it's not even comparable, but that's how the system is here. So it's, difficult for patients. It's difficult to convince people to come through, to the medical card, because it's such a lift for them, and it's financially, it's expensive, and, it's not covered by insurance. So there's a lot of challenges. So really medical prices need to be in line, with street prices for flower for it really to pick up and work. And that's where I think, the Louisiana program where I am a patient, has been a failure. We only have, as of last August, 25,000 patients in the whole program, which is 0.5% of the adult population.
Wow.
Now that is very, very low for a medical program. In comparison, Arkansas, is at about 3% of the adult population with almost 100,000 patients. So, Louisiana, because it's a closed licensing state, it's a limited license state. There's two groups that pretty much own the entire industry. And because of that, the pricing is basically making it inaccessible for folks. So there's a lot of people in Louisiana that would like to be on medical cannabis because it's tested, because they they can trust that it's safer product, because they can kind of see the potency and know the strain and get some kind of information about the terpenes that way, but they just can't because they're priced out of that program. So, there's a lot of work to be done still in these medical programs.
Yeah, and I think that you and I talked about this a little bit before the show, but we were talking about how tech is really shaking things up a little bit when it comes to accessing medical cannabis, even without a prescription. But if you think about it, there's a lot of new gadgets and gizmos that are making it easier for folks to get their hands on it and use it. And I know in New York State, for instance, they have all different ways you can get medical cannabis, from liquids to capsules and patches. And in fact, all thanks to that technology making it possible, you can actually measure out exactly what you need and give you different options to suit your preferences. So I think people think that this medical cannabis is they're going to go there, get some joints and smoke them, and when really there's other ways of getting it. Even vaporization devices are popping up everywhere, but certainly have to be careful about that. But what is your thoughts about sort of that whole technology angle? You talked a little bit about these different ways of getting to
Absolutely.
it.
The regulated market has, benefited, I think, from a lot of this technology. I am constantly impressed with new nanotechnology, water soluble technology, fast acting, all these other ingestion methods. A lot of people who are entering the medical program never plan to smoke flower. You're going to have, it's in the news, the gummy moms, people that are going to use cannabis medicinally to replace maybe a pharmaceutical product. If we just look at the over-the-counter pain and sleep aid industry, that's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry. To me, those are potential medical cannabis patients. Those are the folks that I would like to bring into the fold, because I think a lot of those ailments that those, medications treat are very treatable as well with medical cannabis with less harm, because this is all about harm reduction, right? I mean, that's ultimately what it is, right? We want to feel good. We want to be our best selves with the least harm to our bodies. At least that's how I look at it. So I do find that the more people that get in, see the little pack of gummies, grandma's got gummies, grandma tells auntie, and then everybody's like, okay, well, we can, I'll go get it too now, because it's not this, whatever they perceive it to be in the dispensary, negative, attach whatever negative connotation to cannabis you want to. But there's still a lot of that stigma around. So it's fighting that, and also realizing that not everybody's going to be a rec user. Not everybody's going to want the highest potency. That's a big debate that goes on regularly. I mean, especially in a medical market, dispensaries say, first question they ask on any flower, what's the THC? What's the THC? Because patients associate, quality with highest THC.
Right. Yes.
Which to me is like, THC is like calories. Like, okay, it's something you can use as a comparative, but it doesn't actually tell you what's in it. And
Right.
so what we need to be looking at are the terpenes, the entourage effect. Someone with anxiety, I am not supposed to smoke anything over 20% THC. Like that is a, kind of a rule of thumb, but it's going to take the education component to move away from that, which is something that, we are trying to help with and find ways to, kind of break through this THC is king, perception for the industry. So.
THC and strains seem to be the only thing people talk about, and these terpenes are very important, and how these products get mapped from a terpene perspective. And we've been working with a very incredible biochemist, scientist, which we will have on the show here with his technology. And we also had Green Genes Technology, Ryan Guzal, on last week, talking about this, the mapping of these terpenes and how important it is to get out of this THC world and just talking about the strains when there's so much more to it, and understanding this herb and understanding sort of how you react to it based on the terpenes. We also talked about pharma. So how do you envision a future of the industry if pharma begins to sort of take over from the people who have been that have been in the industry and advocating this for decades? There seems to be like this big fear that pharma comes in, and believe me, last thing we want to do is see, that start to make the industry expensive and stall. But how do you see that future if pharma sort of gets in?
I mean, unless pharma can patent cannabis, I don't see it as, taking away from the culture. I mean, the cannabis culture is going to be alive and has been alive and well way before we started regulating it here. That's not going to go away. The cannabis community, the community that I'm a part of, the people who truly care about this plant and want to share its benefits and, kind of have this kind of grassroots movement to end this prohibition. I don't think any of that is going to go away. I do think there's a lot of potential implications for what it could mean as far as like the financial part of the industry, or winners and losers, or, people joining, whatever that looks like with federal descheduling or rescheduling happens. I don't have a crystal ball, and I am not an expert on any of the, ins and outs of what that would actually mean. I am truly focused on the grassroots of this, working one patient at a time, changing one heart, one mind at a time, doing it, and believing that, that is the path that's going to lead to the most success, in general. And also, for me personally, just kind of what I'm passionate about. So regardless of what happens on the other scene, I'm still going to be pushing forward and being part of this community and trying to enact some positive change.
Well, that's great, because you truly are an advocate for the industry and certainly helping to advance it. And that's one of the things is as we've looked at it at Qredible. You don't have to let farm industry run the show to adopt and grow the industry and adopt some of the same health and safety standards that they use. Those things are important, right? Because if we just took a page from the food safety standards and applied them here more seriously and vigorously in our industry, it certainly would be a whole lot safer. So the benefit that I see in pharma is really about what they have from sort of a safety standards perspective. And the industry does need better testing, better manufacturing and safety standards, which is where our platform comes in. That's really where our niche is. We have used advanced technologies like robotic process automation, AI, and blockchain to build the next generation quality management platform and ecosystem that is really going to help these brands automate the GMP and quality management and compliance process through their workflow. And, that includes driving testing and transparency. And I think technology is the key to help this industry advance to the mainstream, because as the changing dynamics are coming into play, as research is increasing, and we are going to see this rescheduling. I hope to see descheduling, but we are going to see rescheduling. And as that happens, we're then going more into the mainstream. And it's very important that there's safety and transparency. So along the way, as Qredible is working with some amazing brands and nonprofit organizations and testing labs and GMP specialists, we're able to better educate through data the consumers on the quality of the brands that exist out there and help drive the standardization and transparency and safety, which is all very critical to really making this a legitimate medical and adult use market for wellness. And we don't need pharma for that. We need the advocates, we need the experts that are already in the industry. We just need to overlay sort of these quality standards. So I'll get off my soapbox because that's sort of what I've dedicated my life to right now.
I love it. And to be able to do this, we do need consumer protections, right? We do need standards. I mean, that is part of the pain of moving this into, regulation is having to kind of align all of these standards that we need to have to be able to protect the consumer, because this is a consumer good on that level as far as distribution goes. Yeah, I mean, I love it. I think that's exactly where we need to go with it.
Well, I do like to say that just because it's legal doesn't mean it's safe, right? So
100%. Yeah.
And that's important. So, we're already starting to see a lot of recalls out there in various states, and some states, by the way, aren't even doing recalls. They aren't even collecting safety and recall data. And we're going to see that accelerate. And frankly, with the result of some of these crazy synthetics that we see, the loophole stuff coming from the hemp and CBD side, we're going to see more hospitalizations and adverse health events. So basically, safety is extremely important, and technology is very, very key to helping to automate, track, and monitor, all that. So, it's great to hear that that you're a wonderful, advocate of that. So as we talk about, the future, and we talk about sort of what's going on there, I mean, what do you think are the key things that sort of have to happen to get this into the mainstream and get more people understanding? Like, let's say in the state of Mississippi, where, there's a big job there, huh?
Yes. And I think a lot of my industry friends from outside of Mississippi and Louisiana and in different markets, they can't really fathom the depth of the stigma as it exists here. I mean, we do have, a lot of high notes in Mississippi. We have 130 dispensaries open in the state. We have almost 40,000 patients at the beginning of year 2. We have, even just despite all the restrictions and difficulties and the expense, I do think that we have a very healthy, diverse market. We are an open license market. So, we have lots of players in the space, but that's where it becomes a challenge on the compliance side. When you have so many, smaller groups, it becomes very difficult. And we've seen that. I mean, we've already had one of the testing labs lose their license completely revoked, and it caused a huge quarantine recall. It was quite an event in the market right before Christmas, and unfortunately has turned a lot of patients away. So, we're having an issue of renewals. 2 out of 10 are not renewing their cards. And so we have a large mountain to climb here, but the stigma, is alive and well, because I know of many patients that have told me that they don't go to the closest dispensary to their house because they don't want anyone to see their car parked out there, or they don't want to. So that's how strong it is still here. And that's really kind of my example to convey that. So, we have a lot of folks are worried, they're going to lose their guns. They're going to, lose their jobs. They're going to be, there's doctors here telling their patients if they get a medical cannabis card, they're going to kick them off the opioids cold turkey. They're just going to pull the rug out. And, that's not helping people get off opioids. So there's just such a disconnect. And until we can really bridge this gap and go to the doctors and educate, doctors learn in med school that cannabis is a Schedule I. So they don't learn about any medicinal properties because the Schedule I cannot have any medicinal properties, right, by definition. So it's like almost like this ethical, I can imagine, I'm not a doctor, but I can imagine it would be an ethical dilemma to be, okay, I've been taught this, I've learned this, but yet, I can see with my own eyes that this is medicinally beneficial and can help my patient. And, but it's got to be tough for a lot of medical professionals, and probably for a reason why they don't offer it up as an option. My ideal experience is that when I'm visiting with my my GP, and they're talking me through my options, that medical cannabis is presented as an equal option to the pharmaceutical options that are out there. And I think, just bringing it into the group of potential treatments would be a huge step in the right direction. So.
Well, I think, when you look at that, the pharma industry is the largest lobbying group in the world, so that is certainly why pharmaceuticals is always going to be front and center. And don't get me wrong. I mean, there's obviously a place for medicine and there's a place for pharmaceutical. But for what I call everyday wellness, and things that can be solved through more herbal methods, it doesn't make sense that we're not researching this. I mean, the Israelis have been doing research on the endocannabinoid system for 40 years now. And they're actually using things like CBD and hemp derivatives and other cannabinoids in nursing homes, to help with wellness and to avoid some of this pharmaceutical stuff. And we're so far behind in this country. And look, I've said this before. I believe that God put this herb on the planet for a reason. And it's like anything else that's been given to us. We just can't abuse it, right?
Right.
But we have to figure out how to use it. And it's crazy to me that doctors, are not taking the time to research this, but yet, they'll take the options for lunches and dinners with the pharmaceutical rep, and learn those opportunities. So that's sort of an uphill battle there because of the stigmatization, because of the fact that there's just a lack of education and understanding, and that all has to change, and that's going to take a little bit to make that happen. But you're critical in doing that. You're one of those critical people in the industry that's helping with that, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about the work of your company and how you're helping, to advance companies to really get into business and also to make this happen, advance this industry.
So what we're doing, me and my co-founder, Elena, who's wonderful, we are working with brands and retailers to focus more on the medicinal benefits of cannabis, less of a rec approach and more of a medical approach, because we think, especially in an emerging market like Mississippi, where there's so little information and education, having a knowledgeable bud tender, having knowledgeable, just any kind of research resources for the patients, showing them, terpene effects, explaining why lower THC might be better for someone with anxiety. I'm not trying to sell you an inferior product. I'm explaining why this is best. So through building out educational material and events and platform, we're trying to give an advantage to the brands and retailers we work with, because we think that that's going to give them the repeat business and help build their following and loyalty by having that extra information. Because a lot of folks come in and they have no clue. I mean, I met a woman this morning who just got her card, walked in, didn't know anything, and was like, this is my first time. Like, literally just trusting the bud tender to make her a good recommendation. So for her to have a good experience, if she just gets sold 30% THC and walks out the door and then gets, uncomfortably high and never wants to do it again and hates the program, like, we've just lost a patient. So it's critical, the people who are already in the cannabis community, they're not going anywhere, but to bring in more folks, we need to have less of an approach on the recreational side of it and more of an approach on the medical benefit, right? Because there's a large group of folks that I think would be interested if that was, available to them. So,
and I think it's the medical side, but in those states where there's adult use recreational, I refer to that, just because of how I use it, as the wellness side of the business, right? So understanding how you could use it for wellness purposes. For me, I don't go to a medical dispensary. I go to a recreational dispensary because I use it for sleep. But I've also, just like I have my supplements, I understand how that impacts me. And it's taken me a little while to get the right product, get the right terpenes, get the right mix, in order to figure out what gives me a good night's sleep, right? And how it really interacts with my body. So I think it's fascinating because it really is about medical. It really is about wellness. And I love the work you're doing. How do people get in touch with you if they want to hear more about your company and work with you?
well, they can get me on LinkedIn, Christine Harrell, or Firefly Growth Solutions. We also have a landing page, fireflygrowthsolutions.com. And then I'm on Instagram as Chrissy Canna. So
Awesome. That's great. Well, it has truly been a pleasure having you on board. And I would love to figure out how we talk about some of the tools that we're working with to actually help advance the causes that you're doing. So love to chat offline more about that and get to know more of the work you're doing. So thanks for joining us today. Much appreciated.
Thank you both so much. Have a wonderful day.
You
Bye.
too.